Welcome everybody, and like I said when we reviewed Jason and the Argonauts a few days ago, that I would be looking at a second film that was heavily set in Greek mythology after being mightily impressed by the Odyssey, and yeah, it is 1981's Clash of the Titans. So this is released via the HMV Premium Collection and came out quite some time ago, in 2010, in fact. So no, 2018. Sorry. 2018. So a year newer than the Jason and the Argonauts release, but still hardly a new release despite that. But yeah, this is directed by Desmond Davis, who I've not seen anything else from before. And just like Jason and the Argonauts, it's an epic fantasy adventure, although slightly longer at 118 minutes long. Did have a budget between $9 and $15 million, so definitely a bigger production than Jason and the Argonauts. And it was also more successful at the box office, returning 70 million worldwide, which is yeah, huge amount of money to be returning for what is quite ostensibly a much more classic kind of film. This is certainly not a film that you would have expected to have come out in the 80s. This is right in the same year as the first Indiana Jones film. Um, but as far as epic fantasy films go from this year, it's certainly better than Excalibur, which was released in the same year as this. While also, despite that film being produced on the same kind of budget as this, made only half the amount worldwide. So yeah, this was definitely the more successful film. And as far as I'm concerned, it is the better of the two. But yeah, it stars the likes of Harry Hamlin in the same year as this, was also in the underwhelming King of the Mountain. You've also got Burgess Meredith, who was in 11 other films. He was really rather great in the likes of The Hindenburg and Burnt Offerings. You've also got Maggie Smith, who was in 19 other films. Who was in the 1978 version of Death on the Nile, as well as A Room with a View and Murder by Death. You've also got Ursula Andress, who was the first ever Bond girl in Doctor No, as well as being in Red Sun. Then you got Claire Bloom, who was in the likes of The Haunting, The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, and Daylight. Sean Phillips, who was in Murphy's War and The Doctor and the Devils. Flora Robson, who was in Black Narcissus, Eye of the Devil, and 55 Days at Peking. And last but not least, you got Laurence Olivier, who we've recently talked about in Oh, What a Lovely War. So, to win the right to marry his love, the beautiful Princess Andromeda, and fulfill his destiny, half god, half mortal Perseus must complete various tasks, including taming Pegasus, capturing Medusa's head, and battling the feared Kraken. So, yeah, as far as fantasy films that feature the visual effects work of Ray Harryhausen, this is probably the best of the several that he was involved in, as this is on the whole entertaining and engrossing as well. But it's his effects work that is really, really rather great. There's so many effects works in this that he actually had to have help in doing this, unlike previous films where he really didn't. I think the only other one where he had help was Mighty Joe Young, and that's because he was working under Willis O'Brien rather than being the lead visual effects animator there. But yeah, you got the likes of Pegasus, you got a metallic owl called Bubo. There's a Kraken himself. I'm not sure if he worked on the scenes where the city of Argos gets destroyed by the Kraken in a massive tsunami, but that is still really rather good effects work regardless. There's also a few scorpions in this that come alive and attack some soldiers. There's a two-headed dog that I completely forget my name of, and then there's Medusa in probably one of the best scenes that Ray Harryhausen was involved in, because it's actually a reasonably horror kind of vibe orientated scene, but it's also really, really just well done. So yeah, loads of effects work in this, and yeah, that is where this film shines best. But the cast is also really good, with a few notable names involved, which really hasn't been the case with a lot of other Ray Harryhausen films, which typically have B-level stars in some cases, or first timers. So yeah, it's really interesting that we had some big names in this, to kind of rival some, I guess you could say, some disaster films from the late 70s. Um, which makes a nice change to have a cast that you know quite well. It's also predominantly well paced. The action scenes are really fun. The score is great, which is kind of needed for a fantasy film to really make it feel as epic as it is. It has solid production value regardless of Ray Harryhausen's work. The designs for Medusa and the Kraken are well done. I really like the mix of locations, and the plot is overall enjoyable. So yeah, overall, a really rather solid film, and one that I do prefer over Jason and the Argonauts, so it does get a healthy 4 out of 5. And yeah, this could definitely do with a new release, but this Blu-ray from HMV's Premium Collection is still a fairly solid one regardless. Um, and we get the case itself. So this is that old that you actually get a Blu-ray and a DVD, which, yeah, certainly isn't the case these days. I'm pretty sure we can see a photo of the Kraken in the background here. Yeah, I'll get it out of the case actually because it is a little bit on the blurry side. Yeah, there is the Kraken himself. So yeah, pretty monstrous monster there. And then we also get a booklet with this release as well. No art cards though, that we sometimes do get with these premium collection releases. But nonetheless, you got shots from the film, which for some reason in black and white. But yeah, you do get like a just a bunch of write-ups here. Not sure who these have been written by, but you do also do get cast and crew, and then you get a cast write-ups as well. So there's Harry Hamlin. Not sure if he had much of a career outside of this. Then you got Judy Boker, who I've not seen in anything else from before, but she does play Andromeda. And then you got Laurence Olivier as Zeus. Maggie Smith as Fetus. And then you got Ursula Andress. So full nearly 20 years after Doctor No, but she was still impressive enough despite that. And then you got Burgess Meredith as a mom. Ursula Andress, by the way, plays, who was it again? Aphrodite. And then you got obviously Ray Harryhausen himself working on the Kraken there itself. So yeah, fantastic effects work from him overall. And then you got the Medusa, got some behind the scenes shots there, him holding up the Medusa head. Probably the most graphic bit of work that he's ever done. And then you got the mechanical owl called Bubo. Now, a lot of people said this was basically trying to capitalize on Star Wars and R2D2, but apparently this was made and created or even like designed before Star Wars was even a thing, and that's kind of understandable given how much effects work and storyboarding and no doubt pre-production would have had to have gone on with this before actually filming it, because yeah, it was a Herculean task and definitely the biggest production that Harryhausen ever worked on in terms of budget and the amount of effects. And yeah, these are some of the monsters here. So Pegasus is here as well as Dioskylos, which is a two-headed dog that I was mentioning. And we've also got Medusa, who's a really good marksman with that bow and arrow. She cannot overwhelm Perseus. And then there's the Kraken again. So it's a really neat booklet, this, just to get a sense of everything that's going on. And then there's a couple of more. So you got Calabos there, and they've got the scorpions that I was talking about, and then a character as well. And then just more shots from the film, as well as an amazing looking poster. I'd love to have that for my wall. That's really, really cool. Although obviously I don't think Pegasus actually comes in contact with the Kraken. But yeah, still really nice booklet there to give you some behind the scenes kind of like looks and some write-ups as well. And on the disc itself, in terms of special features, you've got a conversation with Ray Harryhausen, and then Myths and Monsters Gallery, which is probably more like just like the booklet there. So yeah, on the whole, a really, really solid effort. And yeah, but unfortunately, the final film that Ray Harryhausen would work on, I think he said it was basically because he figured that with the way that computer generated images were coming in and stuff, that his kind of work wouldn't be all that necessary. And even though that was kind of the case in some respects in terms of a lot of films having a lot of stop motion animation, there still was undoubtedly stop motion animation that was still being used well into the early 90s. You look at RoboCop with Ed 209 and the like. Was also stop motion animation work with a few other films as well that are currently slipping in my mind, but it certainly wasn't a dead art form. It still lived on for a good another 10 years or so, but given how much it shrunk down in terms of the amount being used, you can fully see why he decided to retire. And he certainly retired on a high, because this was, I think, the biggest box office success he'd had with a film. And certainly one of the bigger productions that he worked on as well. I think there might well have been a Sinbad film that might well have been relatively similar in terms of budget, but yeah, undoubtedly one of his best, and certainly one of the biggest production films that he worked on, and certainly was a great showcase for his work as well. So yeah, 45 years on, and it's still a thrilling and really rather engaging effort, and one that is well worth seeing. But nonetheless, if you have seen the original Clash of the Titans, then I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you with the next one. Bye.